Welcome. Today we're going to talk about why charisma is so relevant for becoming all that you could be. So today in the morning, I was reading Beyond Order, and I was on rule number 2, which is becoming all that you could be. And it's a very interesting topic, and I wanted to actually point out the important connections between the event that I was holding and that you will now be able to access as a replay. If you comment below that you want the replay of the Charisma Advantage event, I'll be able to send you a link. You'll also be able to access that in the group. But the Charisma Advantage and reverse engineering charisma was a major success, and it was very helpful for people, and I got a lot of phenomenal feedback. However, I wanted to point it out and connect it to something beyond the initially potentially superficial reaction towards why charisma is important in the first place. Because a lot of people think that it's some kind of selfish, not noble pursuit to be charismatic or even influential. And I'll show you why that is actually the case, and why charisma is very, very important for becoming all that you could be, which is a noble idea and a very, very good value to have. So what's the deal with becoming all that you could be, and why does charisma matter? Well, it matters because it influences many more factors than you initially realize. It doesn't just influence how other people perceive you, it actually influences you can think of charisma as a set of behaviors that you don't necessarily you don't act them out, but rather a certain state of mind, a combination of psychobiological systems, meaning various psychological systems and biological systems come together, and then a certain behavior is played out. You behave in a certain way. You interpret situations in a certain way. You see certain things and not others. You're wearing and not really rose-colored glasses, although happiness and high positive emotion are a huge component of charisma, because it's not only an attractive worldview, which will actually connect to influencing people later, but it's also the neuro associations that you provide with someone. And this is also relevant for leaders. So people in leadership positions, one of the biggest drivers of performance is going to be what kind of emotions you're provoking in the people that you're leading, in the people that you're interacting with. What kind of emotional states are they in? Are they actually in states of high performance? And this is part of what I do with my clients, with the business owners, with managers. So it's a big topic, and it's not just about being loud or anything that is superficial. It's rather about deep systems that we can actually modulate. So if you're curious about how to optimize the charismatic, influential, being able to change outcomes aspect of yourself, which could be translated into charisma, because it creates changes in the social realm that are then able to improve performance, change certain things, change outcomes, change behaviors, address problems, and inspire change. So it's a very critical skill, very valuable skill nonetheless. There's even investors that do not invest in entrepreneurs that do not exhibit a certain level of charisma. And they do that because simply, even if your idea is great, even if you actually know what you're talking about, even if you're speaking the truth, if you are not able to convey and present that message and it to be accepted by other people, you don't stand a chance, because people aren't primarily rational. It's primarily the emotional brain, and rationality and logic has an input into the emotional realm, but it's not the main thing we look for. So if you're curious about the charisma advantage and how to reverse engineer charisma instead of trying to fake it and have all these hacks, but rather the actual cause of charismatic behavior, then I encourage you to comment below that you want access to the charisma advantage, and I'll send you the replay. You can also join my group and reach out to me personally. I'll make sure that you get it. But I'm very excited for you to watch it if you haven't already. And now let's dive into why does charisma matter so much. So not necessarily the mechanics, but why does it matter? Well, we can even go into judging how charisma, you being charismatic, how does that influence your behavior? And for this, we're actually going to bring up a old age mystical mythical is the right word, I believe, god called Mercury. And Mercury was the god that people believed in, that described, they used it to describe the phenomena of your attention being hijacked by something. And it's the fact that we as human beings don't necessarily always, we're not in charge of our attention or what we consider significant. And the god Mercury is actually the god of what grabs our attention and what we believe to be significant, which is amazing. And the reason it's amazing is because it actually crosses over to dopamine. Dopamine is what controls our attention, what can hijack our attention, what decides, it's what controls. The dopaminergic system is what controls what we're curious about. It controls what we consider significant. It controls what we value, what our values become. One of the problems in drug addiction is that because something begins to stimulate so much dopamine, it actually becomes placed at the top of our value hierarchy. So it actually changes our psychology, changes what we consider important. And the definition of what's important to us is actually what we consistently act on. So dopamine, Mercury, and this entire system is in control of our actions. So how does that relate to charisma? Well, charisma actually protects us in some sense. Charismatic behavior is partially controlled by the serotonergic system because it modulates our fidgetness, how scared we are, if we see opportunity, or if we're risk averse. If I was primarily risk averse, I wouldn't be having this video. If I was primarily risk averse, I wouldn't be doing many of the things I was doing. But I'm actually preoccupied with the rewards, and that's really that kind of that aspect of the serotonergic system is actually what drives, what controls a lot of people's behaviors. Is that if your serotonin is high, you believe that you have more control over outcomes. And if you believe that you have more control over outcomes, then you're actually more likely to pursue success. But if your serotonin is low, then your primary occupation is to not die and basically avoid risks at all costs. So how this translates into becoming, all that you could be is that you will simply, you can't really become all that you could be if you do not pursue novelty and challenges and places where it's not even fully up to you, but you're trying to influence certain outcomes. So becoming all that you could be requires that you prioritize growth. And for you to prioritize growth and long-term goals, you need higher serotonin, which if you don't have higher serotonin, you're not really going to be very charismatic. Because a lot of the aspects of how we judge someone to be charismatic is also related to power. If my serotonin was low, you would judge me very unfavorably. When my serotonin is higher, I am being judged by other people in a much better light. If my power is high, if my serotonin is high, my kindness is interpreted as kindness. If my serotonin is low and I am kind, my kindness is interpreted as weakness. And there's so much more into that when you watch the charisma advantage. So looking at that, we'll see that if having charisma is almost like an indicator that your neurochemistry is pulling you and creating proclivity for pursuit of long-term goals and more abstract, higher values that you choose. So one of the things that happens is that as your serotonin goes up, you're less concerned about fitting in. You're less concerned about social judgment because you're basically the cool kid. Being different and cool is good versus being different but not cool is not good. It's detrimental to your survival. You'll be preyed on by bullies and other aspect, and many different things are not going to go well. But really, when you're looking at that, the coloring of your psychology almost, that depending on your serotonin, you're going to be having different priorities because survival and excellence mean different things to you. Which then influence everything from discipline to the type of career you choose to how motivated you actually feel to improve your health, for example, and how vulnerable you are to social clusters, for example. So social clusters is a phenomenon in sociology that shows that behaviors, attitudes, so smoking, fixed mindset, lack of motivation, being unhappy, depression, anxiety, they actually go in groups. So if you have someone with specific personality makeup or specific beliefs or habits or behaviors or attitudes, then that's going to change you. Now, that's obviously on a social level, we're not really able to study the modifiable aspect, but because we understand the science, or I understand the science of an individual, and there's a ton of research to support this, both in animals and in humans, is that as your serotonin goes up, you're actually more self-directed in your behavior, beliefs, values, all of those things, which means that you're actually more protected from your environment. You don't just become a product of your environment, which hopefully everyone should aim for that to an extent, is that we should actually put some thought into what we value, what we end up doing, what we end up pursuing, what's important to us, and what we consistently act on. Because if we don't, then we're just victims of our own environment, and we might as well just rely, then your destiny becomes like the weather. You just don't know. So now another aspect of being charismatic is that if you're unable to be charismatic and you're trying to be all that you could be, well, part of being all that you could be is to actually help people around you. But if you are not able to create an attractive message and have an attractive worldview, it will not spread to other people, which means that if someone has a problem, if someone's psychology is leading them down a dark path, you're not going to be able to help them because your message is unattractive. If someone's health is going really down and is going in a horrible direction, you're not going to be able to help them because the words you choose, you don't understand what is required of someone to accept your message as true, and what would have to happen in order for them to change how they think about something, or how their interpretation of something, or how they're approaching. I can give you 2 examples. So with a lot of the times that I work with business owners, we're focusing on their performance, we're focusing on optimizing their biology. Obviously, if you're in the 90th percentile of testosterone distribution, your drive, your focus, your energy levels, all of those things are going to change. So we're optimizing the individual. Their psychology is often aligned already. They're often very motivated, and so that allows them to just spare their willpower. But then another aspect, so I really primarily work with 4 aspects, is going to be performance, obviously, but then influence. Because once you optimize your own performance, ultimately that's only going to take you so far. It can take you really far. But then on the influence side of things, with their employees, with their partners, how do you influence them? When a relationship is different, how do you influence them? And this is where the science of an individual and how does this psychological makeup exist, and how does that translate into changing and altering your communication? That's where it becomes an amazing experience, because it becomes so influential. So I'm not gonna bring up names, but it's I might display an event that happened this morning with my wife. I think you'll actually find it very useful. But back to the business owner. So one of his employees has a history of being a star in a sport. But at this point in the job, he's not really engaged. He's not the same person. And obviously we discovered that was a time of high serotonin for him when he was dominating in the sport as a youth. And this is very common. And so then obviously if you have this memory of high serotonin back in the day, and this is why people often fantasize about the past, it was a time of high serotonin, when their status was high, when their competence was really high, when they had a lot of admiration. If that picture then is contrasted into a situation now, and more importantly, if you link the cause of your dominance not with something that is within your control, but rather with something like talent, with something that is outside of your control, then that becomes your happiness and high serotonin are as random as the weather, which is very harmful and very difficult to live with, and that will cause some kind of depression, anxiety, lack of meaning. Coming back here, so but back here, he felt like actually there was nothing that was in his control to achieve high serotonin, because for everyone now, what the standards for high serotonin are different for each person. So that's the beautiful thing, and we can actually change that. But in his current worldview, he was unable to actually get engaged. His pride wasn't in it. He wasn't able to gain status through effort and performance. And that's death for any kind of employee, even for the business owner, for everyone. If you're not able to gain status through performance, and if you're not able to gain performance through effort, Because, for example, you're missing the links between biology. You're constantly tired. You're not going to improve your performance if your biology is not allowing for it. So no amount of psychological personal growth is going to help you if your biology is not in the right place, right? So this is why I specialize in all these 4 areas, because for me to solve this problem and help this business owner, I actually have to be competent across all of these disciplines. And this is exactly what we did. So suddenly we were able to awake some of that passion back. The business owner had a conversation with his employee, and he was able to kind of get that excitement back, because suddenly they started talking about goals. They started bringing them back into his control instead of just like observational existence. And that lit him up. And now that's an association. And so now we're able to kind of build that back. And now we're going to connect that with the path of becoming a high status person again, thinking of yourself highly. And we're going to be able to channel his reward system in that direction, which is going to drive business profits. So that's one example. That's in a professional setting. But another example is simply with my wife. So, we are, I have a 4-month-old almost son now, and my wife has done a lot of research. We've listened to a lot of books about parenting and its effects on, the life of Connor, for example. So what are we, if we do something, if we treat him in a certain way, if we communicate in a certain way. Obviously, we did that for biology, but we're also doing that for psychology, communication, influence. And a lot of the research is found in, just like with everything, most of the research that we extract from nutrition, from parenting, from all this, is on a social level, which means that we're able to, we have to take very simple concepts and look for them across populations and see the correlations between them. And so that means that, for example, we don't want to let Connor cry for too much. The problem is, because, and here's the thing, there's many levels to that anxiety, because if all children are gonna cry. But what ended up happening with my wife is that she developed much higher level of anxiety towards things not being good enough. Oh, I'm not doing this right, and I'm exhausted. I'm not doing this right, and this is going wrong. And his ability to form relationships with us and people is going to be harmed forever, because that's what the data shows. That's what the research shows. And that's deadly accurate if, and this is what, for example, Jordan Peterson falls for as well, is that he draws conclusions about individuals from large social data that gives us a lot of very useful concepts. However, if we look at the social data without understanding the individual systems, which is what my specialty is, then you think that you're hopeless and that you're a victim to certain things. That if his stress response is too active, for example with Connor, we can't do anything about it. However, from research on individuals, we know that we can. It's just that to create those kind of interventions is very complex. It's very difficult to measure, because even with, I can change someone's beliefs in a moment, but what am I actually doing? It's very difficult to get that down into, oh, this is what he did. So I could increase someone's serotonin production through different aspects of psychology, through cognitive behavioral therapy. Different techniques that I'm using. However, to measure that on a global scale, very difficult, because serotonergic system is comprehensive. It involves so many things, and it's so individual based. But on a social level, the easier thing to study would be affirmations. Oh, how is this going to affect confidence? Oh, if a parent says 3 words of affirmations, then the children's confidence goes up by 10% or 5%. And so that's much easier to measure, but it's also much less effective. Versus if you understand the science of an individual, you can actually change like 98% of things about someone. If you actually understand the systems that create it and what are the levers that we have access to there. So, but from that perspective of, oh, if I do this, then Connor's gonna have this problem. He's going to become a drug addict, and there's nothing I can do about it. That's what a lot of people fall for with science, even with sociology and politics. Oh, just because I'm born in this neighborhood, there's no hope for me. Just because I'm born to this parent, there's no hope. But that's on a social level. The social level shows correlations. But if we But there's just so many things that we can't really measure on a social level because those are too complex metrics. To be able to judge someone's serotonergic system and how those standards are evaluated is very difficult. But to change someone's serotonergic system is actually quite easy if you understand what creates it in an individual. So this is why, as soon as we focus in on, and I understand that this might be a little too complex, but probably not. If you're enjoying this, let me know. I would love to know. And if we're optimizing the actual causes of something instead of just looking for correlations, that's when we have ultimate power, because there's no problem that we can't fix in someone. Really. I mean, there's really no problem that can't be fixed. Sometimes we have a lack of understanding of certain problems, but there's a lot more than there is a lot of answers out there, even for things that are unknown. Technically, I shouldn't be able to think or speak because of my concussion. I was told that I need to retire, at 23-year-old because, I can't think, I don't have any energy, the concussion really destroyed me. But that's not the case and I already knew that what the social realm, what the social correlation, what sociology shows doesn't apply to me because they're not able to study just how many changes and modifiable levers exist, and I'm going to find all of them. So anyway, my wife was basically able to really get rid of the anxiety that comes from just being passive in like, oh, if I do this, then he's gonna have these problems. Because I was able to say, hey, we can change all of those. But what you need to prioritize is your sanity, because if you don't have your sanity, if you're not in a good place, your anxiety, your depression is going to affect Connor a lot more. So we need to actually optimize towards the right metrics. You can't optimize towards sociological metrics because they're too rigid and simple. The actual picture is much more comprehensive, and you can only act on this. You can only pay enough attention, see the facial expressions, see the emotions, see the beliefs and their consequences. What Connor's serotonergic system is evaluating. If he's evaluating stupid things, we need to change that. And that's also connected to charisma. So if I didn't know how to present that, I could have just criticized, oh, right now you're being a perfectionist, you need to stop trying, and kind of push the self-love message. She would have rejected it because her primary object is to do the best thing for Connor. But I was able to connect her well-being and her understanding of the different levers that are accessible to us, that's going to lead to Connor's well-being the highest. And so the belief was accepted, anxiety was gone, and it was no longer hopeless. Because sometimes if you're focused on too few rigid rules that are making it very easy to lose and very hard to win, which is happening in weight loss, performance, influence, all of these things, consistent, people are creating these games it's so easy to lose but so hard to win, you withdraw. And so I didn't want her to get that association with taking care of Connor, for example. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed that. Hopefully you saw a lot of amazing principles there, because it's truly a fascinating topic. And if you want the replay of the Charisma Advantage, let me know. I'll send you the link. I'll join the group if you haven't. It's an amazing community with so many passionate people that are excited to learn about biology, psychology, performance, and influence. And if you're looking to take things to the next level, let me know. I can link the link to the call where we would be able to dive into these systems. How do we optimize your biology? Because your life as a person, if your thyroid health is, for example, in the 50%, even average, you're never going to be able to achieve extraordinary levels of performance because your biology will always hold you back. Obviously for you could be at a high level, but what you're capable of with a extraordinary biology would increase exponentially. Maybe you're struggling with depression or anxiety, or maybe you're just trying to increase your income in your business. Well, those systems, those categories are going to transform that. And I'm doing that all over and over and over again. And I'm producing testimonials and producing amazing stories of people. So if you guys are excited about optimizing your biology, making sure that your psychology is congruent and driving you in a better direction, and that obviously, mental health is a combination of biology, brain health, hormonal health, and psychology. And I'll definitely, if you're interested in that, I would love to share more about that. But then performance and influence really let you to act out in the world and change things and transform things, which then makes your quality of life just so much higher. So if you're excited about that and you would like to learn more and it fascinates you, or it intrigues you at least, because it fascinates me, then click on the link below, join the free group, and or even schedule a call if you're feeling like you really want to learn about how we could transform those systems in you specifically, because the path of achieving that in each individual is very different. So Charisma Advantage, there's free group, and there's the opportunity for a call. So I'm excited. Thank you for watching, and I hear my son crying. So